All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started here on time. I want to welcome everybody joining us, whether you're here in the States or abroad, whether it's your lunch break or your late night. A huge thank you from Lumin Sports for being here. Another additional thank you to our awesome guests joining us today, who we'll introduce shortly. Some housekeeping before we get started. This webinar came about based on our latest ebook, The High Performance Coaching Blueprint, in which all of our guests were authors and contributors to. If you don't know much about me, my name is Blake Bender. I'm the U.S. Sales Executive here at Lumin. In my previous life, I was a strength and conditioning coach in college basketball, most recently at UC Berkeley. Some order of events for today. We are going to introduce our guests. We're also going to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves. From there, we're going to have some specific questions for the crew, mainly, again, based around how to build your own strength and conditioning blueprint. And then at the end, for the sake of time, I do want to leave enough time for you all to type in some questions for our awesome panel. So again, we really thank you for being here. As much as I would love to take this hour and sell you Lumin Sports and how awesome it is, this is certainly not about us and all about them. So let's get to it and meet our guests. First, he is the Director of Strength and Conditioning at Norwich University. He's also a volunteer firefighter. Pretty nice guy. Mr. NSCA himself. He is also the owner of an Instagram famous dog, Alfie. Everybody, please welcome Scott Caulfield. In addition, she is the Assistant Director of Olympic Sports Performance at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. She was also the 2022 NSCA Assistant College Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year. She has a previous stint at Clemson University. She was also a podium medalist at the American Open weightlifting finals last December. Her next competition is the American Nationals this June. Please welcome Ryan Metzger. Additionally, he is the head coach of athletic performance for Olympic sports at UT Austin. He's also coming off a fresh back-to-back national championship with the women's volleyball program. Congratulations on that. And if that's not enough, he's also a published author with his new book, The Secret Sauce of Leadership, available on Amazon. Make sure you buy it, Mr. Donnie Maib. And last but certainly not least, he's the Director of Sports Performance at California State University in Fullerton. He oversees 18 sports and somehow finds the time to pursue his PhD in biomechanics. On a personal note, he is a huge fan of sidecar donuts. Mr. Sports Science himself, Arjan, Dougan, welcome. Thank you all so much for being here. That's enough of me talking. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys introduce yourselves. We'll start with Scott.
Thanks, Blake. Appreciate it, and appreciate all the work on the Lumin team for setting this up. Norwich University. I am up in the Great White North, so to speak, middle of Vermont. It's the oldest private military college, birthplace of ROTC, and me and my assistant, with the two of us, supervise 22 varsity sports, a little over 600 athletes. We compete in a few different conferences in Division III. And as you mentioned, I'm pretty involved in our community, as well as, I love to volunteer, apparently, is what I've learned lately. Volunteer firefighter, mega volunteer with the NSCA, vice president of the NSCA Foundation, which is the grants and scholarships arm of the NSCA. So hopefully people are aware of that. And I'm still the NSCA Vermont State Director. So yeah, looking forward to this chat. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott. Ryan, go ahead.
That's so much to follow up with.
No pressure.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to Lumin to having this put together and have us on here. This has been awesome so far, and getting to meet basically all of you beforehand, and then getting to kind of reconvene and chat again is awesome. But as you mentioned, Ryan Metzger at the University of Tennessee. I'm the assistant director there, currently in charge of women's soccer and women's tennis. So we are in competitive tennis SEC. season right now. So that's really exciting for us. Currently on spring break, and it is also 9 p.m. here. So I'm going to caffeinate myself a lot tonight. So yeah, I'm sure we'll get some great answers and some great energy and everything. Beyond coaching, I compete in Olympic weightlifting. I've been doing that on the national stage for about 11 years now, and have seen a decent amount of success. And so I'm happy to have that, complement my coaching as well. So.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks so much for being here, and please enjoy that caffeinated beverage. Donnie.
Just want to echo everybody's sentiments. Super excited to be here tonight. Thank you, Lumin. Scott, Caulfield, thank you for the invite to pull me in with just an incredible group of professionals on this project. Like you said, Blake, my name is Donnie Maib. I'm really our head coach for Olympic sports here at Texas. So I oversee and manage 8 other staff, so everything but football, in 4 different weight rooms. This is my 25th year. I just wrapped up at Texas. I've worked with everything from football to men's and women's golf, track, soccer. Currently, I'm working with women's volleyball and the men's tennis team. Those are my 2 direct teams. Also, I have to mention my beautiful wife, Karen, who left me high and dry over spring break. She's in Hawaii. I'm going to throw her under the bus on this call a little bit. We've been married 28 years. We have 4 daughters, ages 23. Isabel's 23. Anna's 21. Evelyn will be 20 soon. She's 19. And I have an 18-year-old going on 30, Olivia. And then we have 2 Cavaliers and 1 Yorkie. Excuse me, Westie.
Thanks so much, Donnie.
You got it.
Arjan.
Yep. Echoing the other guest sentiments as well. Really happy to be here and appreciate you guys putting it together. Right now, I'm the director of sports performance at Cal State Fullerton in Orange County, California. I directly work with baseball, softball, a women's basketball team that just got knocked out of the postseason today, and our men's soccer program, while overseeing now up to 16 additional Division I sports. On the side, I'm doing my PhD in biomechanics, looking at force velocity profiling to optimize individual speed and power training, and looking forward to chopping it up with all these great guests.
Awesome. Well, Arjan, thanks so much for being here with all that free time you have, studying for your PhD and overseeing all these sports. So the way this is going to work, again, we're going to ask some questions individually to each of our guests, but we'd love for the panel to chime in and have a discussion about each of these questions as well. So let's dive into it for the sake of time. And we're going to start right away with Scott. And this is a 2-parter. So let me know if you need a reminder. But first, how has the role and really the persona of a collegiate strength coach changed over time? Part 1. Part 2, where do you think it'll be in 10 years or so?
Ooh, tough. Good one. I think we've seen it change a lot. Those of us that have been doing it for a while here, I think Donnie and I are probably in the same boat in that category. So, it's gone from something that really was primarily just seen with football, right? It was very predominant in football. It was very clear that was football. Obviously, our roots came from that. It grew out of that. So a lot of people would say that a lot of training back in the day maybe was not as sports specific as it might be today. I think, I still hear sport coaches complain, that, our team was doing a football program, right? So I think that what we've seen is a huge evolution into the education, the background, learning more about the intricacies of different sports and how to best prepare for that, to really for coaches to optimize the training of their athletes in whatever endeavor that they're involved in and whatever attributes are needed to be successful in the sport. And obviously now you have schools, where you have programs where a full-time job might just be working with women's basketball, depending on where you are. And so we're getting, more and more of that specialization. I do hope that it continues to grow like that, and that more strength coaches can have a role where they maybe only have to have one program, 1 or 2 teams, So I think, the evolution of it, it's becoming more professionalized, right? We know we have accreditation and accredited certifications, and we have to maintain CEUs, and a lot of the times we do feel, a lot of us feel that we're banging a drum for strength and conditioning coaches and that we have to really, continue to prove our value. But again, you have to remember this is a very young profession. This has not been around that long. So I think, I feel it's just continued still on an upward trajectory of growth and places that we can go, with the profession and how we are able to develop it. There's more and more opportunities in the private sector in tactical strength and conditioning. I mean, the list just keeps going for where we're branching out to, right? We're in NASCAR, Red Bull as high performance, and there's all these different aspects of all kinds of sports. So I think it's a super exciting time, and I think the growth is really just going to continue to take off.
Awesome. So I think you hit a really important point, which is kind of the specialization of the strength coach. I would be interested to hear from the rest of the panel about how they see how the field's changed, and even Arjan and Ryan, who are a little bit newer to the field in terms of just years spent, what they've seen in the past few years.
I think just from a overall demographic of who is gravitating towards strength and conditioning has really changed. And, maybe I don't have as many years of experience, but I've been to conferences for at least the last decade. And it went from seeing me and a handful of other women to now there's a ton. And not everyone, fits the quote profile of what the football maybe birth of strength and conditioning was. And so the population is becoming a lot more diverse. And so we're reaching a lot of other athletes and things like that. And also just the evolution of what a strength and conditioning coach, I think, is becoming responsible for or being mindful of as we're fulfilling our roles. And so I think a lot of times it's like we've had this persona of being the person that just yells at athletes or just counts reps. And like, that's really all surface level, when at the end of the day, it's like, I'm really kind of a bridge for my athletes to a bunch of other areas of their athletic career, whether it's with the sport coach, with sports medicine, with sports psych, with like academics. There's so many other areas that we can reach because we are in so much contact with our athletes. And so I think that's also a big change as well, is we're not just visible in the weight room, we're at games, we're at practices, we're in meetings with all of the people, like we're becoming a presence.
Absolutely. Arjan and Donnie, to kind of wrap up this point, you guys obviously oversee a lot of different sports. So when Scott talks about the strength and conditioning coach becoming more specialized to sport, how do you balance and manage that?
With great difficulty in my current role, having multiple teams and also trying to oversee the department. I guess just to add on to the earlier part of the question of how it's changed, I think, and I guess it's evident in the change in some of our titles, whereas, maybe 10 years ago, we'd all be strength and conditioning and we have athletic performance, sport performance. I think our roles are a little maybe more comprehensive and holistic, and, it's no longer just getting them strong and just getting them conditioned. And obviously that's where Lumin comes in, shameless plug. So I think that's an additional skill set that's being demanded of for strength and conditioning or sports performance professionals, and us in turn being more data driven, data led. And I think, perhaps the old rah, get you going, yell in your face strength coach that may have had a lot more success perhaps in the earlier parts of our profession with the football population, maybe doesn't have as much, or there's a lot more openings for other personalities and other skill sets. So yeah, that's how I guess I might add on to that. Balancing the generalist specialist, I mean, it's really hard. I'm trying to write multiple programs, have different tiers of development within my individual sports, but it's challenging when you have 4 or 5 teams. But it's almost kind of the nature of the business. At my previous stop, I was at a Division 2, and I didn't have even a graduate assistant, so it's 14 teams, and the nature of the job is just very different. I think we'd all prefer to have one team. We'd all prefer to make well into the 6 digits, but unfortunately, not many people can do that, at least not in the early to mid stages of their career. So it is a conundrum. The coaches want the world, and don't you want to win a national championship? Aren't you willing to do what's necessary? But not all the schools have the same resources or support staff, and so tempering those expectations definitely a challenging part at the mid-major level.
Yeah. Speaking of national championships, we do have an esteemed person on the panel who is familiar with those. Donnie, do you have anything to add to that point, just where the profession has come and where it's going?
No, just to echo everybody, I think a little bit. I think one thing you're starting to see, and we're a little behind, but to what Ryan and Scott were saying, the value of our position is finally becoming more prioritized. You're starting to see not only specialization, like Scott said, but everybody sees and needs a performance coach. So you're seeing the value increase. The salaries still need to come up, in my opinion. The big schools are decent, but even some of them are lagging. So I think the value's there. The other part I think you're really starting to see is kind of talk about in the book a little bit, the team behind the team, right? Arjan, he's got a ton of sports there. He's wearing a ton of hats. But you're starting to see with this specialization in sport, in areas that you've got this team behind the team where you've got to be so collaborative in how you approach and provide, whether it's feedback or data or change in programming or nutrition or return to play. You've got to be so kind of locked together in the way, I'm a big Marvel movie fan. I don't know if any of you guys are, but it's kind of like the Avengers. Everybody kind of has to have their specialty, but you kind of got to Scott saying at the beginning, like the football model where football is like big alpha ego, rah, 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 in your face. I feel like that's kind of a model that's dying out. Now, I think there'll always be a place for some of that, especially with football. But outside of that, I mean, you're going to have really high EQ, emotional intelligence, to work with different personalities, different philosophies and approaches to performance and the way the coach wants to structure their staff. And so adaptability and flexibility is going to have to be a huge component of what we're looking for in the team of teams approach kind of in the future. That's the model. The top down, the military approach is kind of dying out, but you're seeing this team of teams, they're flattening out of teams and organizations so that we can move quicker. There's less bureaucracy, less red tape, and we can move faster and make decisions quicker.
Totally. You brought up a really interesting phrase, Donnie, and that's emotional intelligence, right? And this is actually a question for Ryan, who spoke about this in the ebook. And it was one of the themes in your chapter. Ryan, why do you consider emotional intelligence to be so critical to the S&C profession?
I think just to echo basically what everyone has said is that our position has grown a lot and our value of what we do is starting to become more recognized. And to everyone's point, the, maybe more traditional or old-fashioned coach is kind of almost being extinct in that you're finding that the strength coaches are taking more of a holistic approach, as I mentioned earlier, and I think a couple of us have mentioned as well, that there's all these other considerations that go into physical preparation and performance beyond just what is the program that you wrote on the piece of paper, and let's make sure that we do all the sets and reps, because not everyone we know every day is going to be able to give 100% of what that program is going to call for. And so I think a strength coach's ability to almost adapt their approach based on how athletes are doing, even from team to team, but within teams, you have different personality types and different ways that you have to approach people. And so I think to be successful as a strength and conditioning coach, your ability to read a room and almost have these social chameleon skills and be very dynamic in how you approach your athletes is really a huge key to success, because not everyone's the same. And we've realized that, and not everyone's approach is the same, and not every way that you speak to an athlete is going to be the same. So understanding days that athletes need like the grind and the tough love, and this is going to be, hard and we have to do it, versus the days where it's like, you kind of have to coddle them a little bit and reel it in and adjust. Like, as a strength coach, I think it's super important to recognize those moments so that you can deliver the best product to your athlete.
Awesome. Yeah, I think the theme of adaptability is becoming really apparent in what we've talked about so far. And I actually want to shoot back to Donnie a little bit as he was talking about the team behind the team. Something you also talk about is like intentional collisions within your performance department. Could you expand on that and then maybe provide an example of how you're doing that at UT?
Yeah, that's good. I think, kind of where that originally came from, we were coming out of COVID in 2021, and we had kind of spread everybody out so we wouldn't be in close contact. And we were remote. We would see each other occasionally, but it'd be real quick in passing. We wouldn't hang out in our staff. And so coming out of that, there was definitely some, for a lack of a better word, disconnect within our staff. And I was struggling with, and I was like, man, I'd never experienced this kind of problem. And so what's going on? And at the time, I happened to be going through a book called Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh. And in that book, he's passed away, but in the book, he talks about, he designed his whole building of Zappos so that his people would have over 100 collisions a day. He defines the collision of a personal, like, I run into Coach Metzger, Coach Scott Caulfield, at least multiple times a day, casually at the water cooler, getting coffee. His team's leaving, I'm coming in, we're visiting in between groups, but we're having collisions. I'm sharing with him an idea of a struggle I've had with a team. He's sharing with me something that he read recently that helps me. And those collisions create innovation, creativity, problem solving. And then when we get in kind of the staff meeting and there's conflict or disagreement, now we have built trust and rapport that we've had those collisions throughout the week and throughout the year. So now we can solve those problems a lot faster and easier. There's not a lot of, I guess, for lack of a better, just tension or unresolved conflict on our staff. So, I think for me, we had to end up having to restructure kind of how we ran our weight room coming out of COVID. So I just I wanted people to have some freedom and be able to get out and not just be in the weight room guarding their desk, but I also wanted them to spend time with each other. So we had to restructure our scheduling, staffing, and teams. We had to look at that project systems approach to kind of make that happen and be more frequent and intentional. And it definitely didn't fix everything, but it made it much better moving forward.
Scott, I'd be interested to hear just personally how you're doing some similar things at Norwich, or how you're streamlining and making communication more efficient with the broader team.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tougher, I think, in my setting, being in the thick of it with that many teams. We have a small gym. I'm in the basement. I can be pretty I could be the hermit, like, strength coach, weight guy that just never comes out of the basement. Probably no one would ever see me. So I think I have to intentionally get out and make some of those collisions like Donnie's talking about a little more often. But obviously, I really wanted to spread myself across the campus when I got there. And so I reached out to our health and human performance department when I got there and told them, hey, I taught this class, the master's program at UCCS in Colorado, blah, blah, blah. I'm available. Like, that's all I said. And then that's led in now into being an adjunct professor and teaching a class each semester. I have a therapy dog, which you alluded to. I take her, all over. It's a great asset. I would give anybody any tips I can help them with to get dogs in the weight room. It's a game changer. But we do therapy work for the counseling and wellness center at school. And so we have a set time every week that we go to the campus center and have our set time in the fishbowl where students can come hang out, and it's everybody. So we've really been able to spread, like, who we are and what we're doing there across a lot of different areas, and to the point where now it's like, holy cow, I gotta say no once in a while too, because that's hard to do sometimes when you're trying to, like, get it out there and build something. And I was the fourth person in 4 years, so I took over a very unstable setting, and that it is what it is, right? But, like, to now be able to really reach out and have people know you across campus, I think it was really important to establish that so that people knew who you were and what you're there. And really, it's just like hey, how can I help you? And that's as simple as that, trying to just not ask for stuff, but be more helpful. And I've found that to be immensely successful.
I love it. Yeah, I love the giving back to kind of receive that buy-in as well. Kind of to your point, Scott. And then, Arjan, I think you're in a very similar situation. You obviously have a deep tie to the academic side at your institution. And to get a little bit more specific, I'd be really curious to know how you, with all of your sports science and technology, are distributing that communication to all the stakeholders that are involved, and kind of how you see that through.
Yeah, it's a work in progress, and it's definitely not done. One of the initiatives, I mean, now that we've started this, and I guess we've changed our approach from kind of trying to roll a lot of these systems and processes out to all of our teams, and then realizing with the support staff we have that it's perhaps not as realistic. Some things that we've tried to help with those touch points and get that information in the hands of these people to make more informed decisions is setting up weekly performance meetings. So instead of relying on our once a semester look at our goals and maybe give the coaches a report, as it was at my institution, at least when I got here, trying to formalize that more in the expectation to go over this, impactful data with those other stakeholders like sports medicine, like the coaching staff, and be able to workshop these issues. I don't have the luxury of being able to attend every practice, and sometimes I might not even go to one practice that week for a team. And so it makes it a lot harder. Our coaches, have busy schedules. So that's been helpful, whether it's Zoom or it's in person, in addition to those kind of informal catch-ups. And it tends to be a lot more effective than, me attaching the PDF report of all the semester's changes and the GPS loads. And I'm sure they go straight into the deleted folder. So yeah, work in progress, and, you can never communicate too much. Those are some of the ways that we've, try to get all this information that we are collecting in the hands of the people that can make decisions in the time that needs to be done.
Yeah. And I think buy-in's huge. And I'm coming over to you, Ryan, with this next question. So as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you arrived at Tennessee, the soccer program had just won 2 straight SEC East Division titles. You arrive in 2022. How do you get buy-in from a group that's already successful, and just keep the train rolling?
That's a great question. You want to know what? When I took the position at Tennessee, the thought of that, like how to create buy-in and be with a successful group, didn't even cross my mind, because I knew that they were great, and all I wanted to do is help support their success. And so I think very early on, something that helped a lot with women's soccer in particular is when I first got to Tennessee, it was the middle of April in the spring. So soccer had maybe 2 to 3 weeks left before they were going to leave for the summer. And I took those 2 to 3 weeks to be intentional, and I set up individual meetings with every single soccer athlete on that team. And I said, what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? Where do you play on the field? Like, I asked them so many questions about them and their position. And then I was like, okay, how can I help you be successful? What equipment do you have available to you over the summer? Like, what do you need? And I was just trying to get a feel for them as an athlete. And so that 1, they would have an introduction to me, but 2, I could get a better picture of who they were as well. And I think sitting down with them individually made them all individually feel I cared and they were important, and I wanted to know everything about how to help them continue their success. In those meetings, I mean, obviously, coaches are different and approaches are different. And so I think we would talk about, maybe you'll see something a little different here, but maybe if you like that before, we can still deal with that or put this in. And so I was upfront about like, hey, maybe there's a transition. Maybe I'm a different personality. Maybe we'll do things a little bit differently, but this is how it's going to help you perform. And so I was extremely intentional about making sure I spoke with every single person beforehand. And I know that the soccer team has been involved in the selection process. So anytime that there's been a position open, the athletes do get a voice. And so before I even showed up on campus, they put together what they thought their ideal strength coach would be. And I didn't fit the bill, actually. And the head coach was like, that's cool and all, what would you think about someone like this? And he kind of presented some more of my traits, and they were like, oh, yeah, that would be cool. So he kind of almost gift wrapped me and presented me to them almost as if it was their idea. And then I just kind of kept rolling on that train and, let my previous successes hopefully speak for themselves, and also let the fact that I train speak for itself, and show them that, being a female and doing these things is really great for what you do. And I'm here for all the success. And so I think that was a major key.
I want to come to Donnie because in a little bit of a contrast, you guys had won a national championship and you obviously remained at UT. How did you bridge those 2 seasons? So Ryan was talking a lot about how she came in and made sure to have a meeting with everybody on the team and make sure the athletes had their voice. How did you kind of manage the expectation, the standard that you had set from the previous year to be able to repeat?
Yeah, great question. I would say, one of the things we had that really helped us, and I have to give a lot of credit to these 2 young ladies. Logan Eggleston was Player of the Year. If you know anything about volleyball, she was a transformational leader. She's the real deal. She loves her team. She loves volleyball. Cares about issues outside of volleyball. So she was the full package, and just was the heart of our team. So when she left, it was definitely it was a big piece missing. But we had a young lady that ended up staying for her 6th year. Her name was Asia O'Neill, and if you know anything about Asia, her dad is Jermaine, played NBA, so she's got the goods too. She's definitely more of a quiet but very direct, blunt leader. So I would say Asia O'Neill, Molly Phillips, who stayed for her 5th year, she was the opposite. And then also, obviously, Madison Skinner was a transfer. She was a junior last year. But really, Asia and Molly were the kind of the main leaders for that team. And I would just have to say the cool thing about that team is that the culture's been built for so long and the standards so high. There really wasn't any change in kind of what we were doing. I would say this is an interesting piece. I know this would kind of be, Arjan, kind of something you would have a lot of expertise in. We added a new team. So beach volleyball got thrust onto our lap. So now we had to train for indoor and beach at the same time. I've never done that. I can say I learned a lot what we should never do again. I learned a lot of what does not work when you do that. So that was one of those like, aha, I've never done this. And primarily, I'd say just trying to blend a soft court, sand with the hard court. That is not a good mixture of training adaptation, especially in the lower limb. So, but I do think to kind of be very direct to your question, what I kind of try to focus on is we had a bunch of new girls coming in, and I almost spend more time how I structure my workouts. We'll train, like last year, we trained up on the very top of a parking deck overlooking the city, right? Where the girls, I put them in groups, they have to compete together. We'll train all the way out in a sand court out in the middle of nowhere. We'll go to a spin yoga studio. So it's so important when you have so many new pieces. You got older girls and newer girls coming into a team. You've got to change up kind of the structure of how you organize that and make them problem solve, make them communicate more, and kind of look out for each other. There's got to be this bonding piece you've got to build. There's a strength component, performance. We all obviously have good athletes at Texas, but oftentimes with athletes today, they just don't spend time together. So you've almost got to be intentional and structure some of those moments so that they're strong. So we had to build that out more coming out of a great year, going into a different season. That was a big piece of it.
Awesome. Full disclosure, I'm a Texas grad, and I can attest to the city of Austin having some awesome landscape to be able to mix things up and get outside a bit. I'd also be remiss if we didn't get a little bit into the technology talk. And I'm coming back to you, Scott. And some themes that have come up are athletes having a voice. Donnie was alluding to kind of a player-led group. Scott, how are you utilizing, with all the technology in the world, kind of empowering your student athletes with technology and giving them a chance to utilize kind of their data? And what are some things you're looking at there?
Yeah, well, shameless plug for Lumin. At a D3 institution with a tiny budget, we are maximizing what we're doing with Lumin Sports. No, I think a lot of us were tracking wellness and well-being factors and sleep, in a lot of different ways. There's incredible strength coaches with crazy Excel skills that have done wonders in that, and so making the visualizations. But I think that's helped us a lot. Again, for me, when I first took over, it was me solo, over 600 athletes, right? Having an app that I can deliver our training program through, we use Volt Athletics, was a game changer. And it was something new, they didn't have that before. So it was really cool. We've been able to utilize some force plate technology with some partnerships that we're helping collect data. And so we were able to get a force plate in the weight room this year. And so I think, these different types of technology that we're using with the well-being and sleep through Lumin, our training app, the force plate, it's just, the athletes today are very in tune with technology and very interested. Like a lot of them have Whoop bands and Oura rings, and they're already interested. Like I have one athlete that puts all of our workouts from our app into her Whoop app so that she can train the same program through her Whoop app. I don't even know how you do that anyway. So these kids are super in tune with that. And that's really helped create more buy-in for us. They're interested in it. They like seeing the visualizations. They like seeing why we interpret it and how we interpret it. It's like, I'm trying to show a lot of the time, hey, all these well-being markers aren't necessarily red flags that you can't train. These might be red flags that it's like, okay, well, we know you're in the tank. How do we turn this day around? What can we do better now? Can we take a nap? Can you hydrate? Do you need to foam roll? Do we need to back off? Right? You giving them tools to take some ownership of their program and make adjustments themselves. So I think it's been a huge piece to give these athletes more involvement in the training program. And that's where the rubber meets the road for me.
Yeah. Arjan, as someone who uses a lot of sports tech, and I know you're pursuing your PhD and utilizing a lot of that objective data, how do you stay on top of all of the technologies you're using, all of the latest trends in the technologies, and then how do you get the buy-in from the athletes on the reverse side to be able to trust that data?
Yeah, I'm lucky I'm limited by my modest budget that I'm given every year. So there's only so much cool fancy toys and gadgets that I can buy. Staying up to date is, I think it's impossible. I just had some company come to me yesterday with a carabiner that, does everything that your force plate can do with, I'm sure, much less reliability and validity, but, something I didn't even know was on the market until I'm inundated by these sales calls. I think in terms of athlete buy-in, much kind of like what Scott has said, I think educating them is a big piece. I usually am going to try whether they want to know the reason or not. That was always me as an athlete of why are we doing this? How's it going to help us? I think really trying to democratize the data to the athletes. A big goal of ours as we're adding all this tech is to make sure that sports medicine, the coaches, and the athletes themselves can see this data whenever they want. We have as much transparency into the whole process. And I always welcome questions, at the appropriate time and the appropriate manner. But, I think us as coaches should have very good reasons for why we do things, and be it the sets, the reps, the exercises, and all these extra chores that we're essentially asking these athletes to do on top of their demanding schedules as a student and as an athlete, and potentially a part-time job. So that's been the biggest thing, showing them how we're adjusting it. I think that's one of the quickest ways you lose buy-in is if they're just doing these tasks for seemingly no change in their training process or any decisions. It's, the valid question is, why are we even doing this? And you better have a good answer. And how is it helping us be better? Because you are taking up their time, and it is valuable, and they are inundated with requests from coaches and academics. So always a moving target, and something that constantly tries to strive in, and maybe more senior players are more interested perhaps than younger, but yeah, that's a big piece of it. Just trying to explain to them what it means, because they're not going to know your eccentric impulse from your RSI mod until you give it some context and explain how it's going to make them a better insert their sport of choice player.
Awesome. Follow-up question for you, Arjan. How do you have the energy to go to school at night, to cover all these sports, to field salespeople, me included, coming into your office all day long? Like, where do you find the energy, whether it be outside of strength and conditioning in your personal life, or like what motivates you and drives you?
Yeah. Wow. How long do you have? I mean, I imagine it's the same as all of us on this call. We do it definitely not because we love sitting in our offices late at night. We do it for the athletes, that human interaction, the experience, and the transformational ability that you have as a coach in these young people's lives. I mean, we're all in the college sector, and I imagine, at least for myself, that's a big reason. And to have those 4, 5, 6 years of, yes, consistent, compliant athletes to do my training program and get great results, but also, to mentor and impact them as people. The energy, I'm not sure. That's a good question. I limit my caffeine to before 9 a.m. and just running on fumes. I don't have a good answer to that, but I think I'm just, like all of us, I'm sure, really happy with what we do. And, I'd love to be paid 3 times as much to sit back on the beach. But in terms of the intrinsic enjoyment I get out of coaching these young people, I don't think there's anything else I'd be rather doing. So it's a lot easier when you love what you do. And if you don't have that, then you're only going to last so long in strength and conditioning, definitely in the college and pro sector.
Awesome. I do have a few more questions for the guests, but I do want to make a little public service announcement. If you have a question and you're on this webinar, go ahead and start putting that in the chat because we're coming up and I do want to save time to get to those questions. So feel free to type into our chat any questions you have while I wrap up kind of our formal questions here, and we will get those answered for you. Ryan, I'm coming back to you because you have kind of this secondary life of weightlifting. And I know you use that, and you spoke to this earlier, to your advantage when it comes to a coach. What are some of the biggest things you've learned from your personal weightlifting career in terms of how that relates to the S&C world and building your programs?
Yeah, weightlifting is something that I kind of came upon as an accident, to be honest. So my background is as a gymnast. I was a gymnast from the time I was 5 until all through college. I had a stint where I, was track and field and pole vaulted for a little bit, but that just wasn't for me. And when I was looking into strength and conditioning, I went to the University of Kentucky, and they're a big Olympic-based program. I knew that I wanted to be a strength coach, and basically they were like, yeah, we have a GA spot, but we want you to compete in weightlifting. Will you do it? And I'm like, yeah, if it gets me the opportunity to coach, I'll do it. Not knowing that I would be successful in it. And actually, the way that I use it as a bridge is, one, very early on when I started out in my career, it was a great opportunity for me to learn. What works, what doesn't work, how should this feel, how should this look, what does this percentage feel like for me, so that I can then relate it to this is how this is going to feel for my athletes. So it was a great learning tool. And because of that, I actually require all of my interns to train while they're interning at Tennessee in my program. They have to train every single week, and they have to log it, and they have to send their logs to me if they're training. And I want to know what they're learning. So I think, one, if you're going to be a coach, for me, practice what you preach. If you're going to tell them to go do this, then you should have gone and done it already, or you should be active in some way as well. And so that's a really big piece for me. The other thing is just I think utilizing the fact that I've been so successful with training, but also, again, if you look at me, I'm a 5'2", little blonde, meatball running around. It's very relatable to my female population because, I get a lot of athletes who are like, I don't want to lift because I'm going to be bulky, and I'm like, you're not. You are not. I promise we're going to get you strong. We're not going to get you big. So it's a very easy way for me to relate and use myself as an example in so many other areas. And it's a way for, again, to create the buy-in like we talked about, because my athletes understand that I'm competing and I'm training. And they'll be like, what are you doing later today? And I'm like, going to work out. well, what did you hit a PR? When's your next competition? Like they become intrigued about my performance just as much as I'm, wanting to know about theirs. And so I think weightlifting has helped me bridge so many gaps in so many ways that I never even imagined. And a lot of what I do and continue to do and still compete is a lot of because I want to be better than my athletes, right? Like I want to be able to like show them up or get under a bar or like, do something. And so they motivate me a lot to still stay competitive and active within that role. So yeah, it's been amazing.
I love it. The athletes are buying into your journey, which I think is awesome, which makes them buy into theirs. And I think that's really cool. I also would have loved to be your intern because I know I would have gotten stronger being associated with you. So that is pretty sweet.
Yeah, might have been a good Olympic lift. Might have been a good Olympic lifter if I interned with her.
Exactly.
We do some Olympic breakdowns, so
no doubt. We're gonna get to some of these questions from people on the webinar. The first one is, what are some key points that you would recommend on program design and athletic assessment for someone seeking to enter the tactical field? Scott, you want to take that one?
Yeah, totally. So I actually taught HHPR 307, which is tactical strength and conditioning here at Norwich. We use an SCA tactical book. We use all the human kinetic resources. I think you just need to have a very similar hat on as far as strength and conditioning goes. Like it's very similar if you think about it as we think about different sports, right? Police officers, firefighters, EMS, special operations, right? You can look at those as different sports. I did a great Mops and Mo's is the podcast, and we got into talking about some of those specifics. But the word tactical athlete, I think, throws people off. But I think if you think about the actual job duty and the requirements of the job, it's much like a needs analysis that you do for sport. So there's really not as much different. You'll have to think about different programming variables. What that we'll call it load carriage. Having heavy sacks and carrying for long distances, or uneven terrain, or the needs of a woodland firefighter who is dropped into a fire in the middle of nowhere versus a structural firefighter that has tons of gear and SCBA, right? So it's very similar to thinking about sport. If you're thinking about the TSAC certification, I would just say study the book, utilize the resources. I told my class I was going to take it at the end of the semester, and thank God I passed it the first time. So I took it after teaching the class. I reviewed the book. I did the NSCA practice questions that they sell that are online for the tactical facilitator cert. And again, don't tell NSCA I said that, but it's probably the easiest certification that they have right now. So just FYI. Study and take it. You do fine.
Study, take the exam, do all the practice work, and do a needs analysis just like any other sports. Awesome.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it simple, right? We have another question, and it is, what is your best advice for a coach in their first years of leading? I think, Donnie, this is set up perfectly for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, great question. One of my favorite quotes on leadership is, leadership develops daily, not in a day. And, I think when you're talking about leading, you really are talking about just keeping things simple. I'd rather have somebody who, if you're going to be a leader, to be consistent. I always like to say I'd rather under promise and over deliver than over promise and under deliver, especially when you're first starting out. So I think, you got to be careful when you first start out, because you can take on too much and get stretched thin, and then pretty soon you're not doing a high quality job. I know sometimes you don't always have the choice. You have to kind of pick up what people give you, and you get tasks assigned to you. So I think part of when you're first leading is that realize, you're going to make mistakes. I love the book by John Maxwell, Sometimes You Win and Sometimes You Learn. And so early on, I think you see with young coaches, they are not used to being criticized or given feedback, so they get sensitive. And I would highly recommend, if you're just starting out, when you make mistakes, really, they say experience is the best teacher. I think that's inaccurate. I think reflective experience. When you reflect on that experience, you learn from that, then you can adapt and move forward and get better. But again, that takes just, having good emotional intelligence, being open to feedback, and being humble, and learning from those mistakes. So I think you're gonna make mistakes. I think you need to own up to them, learn from them, and move forward. The other thing is that the greatest leadership tool you have is personal example. So if you can just, this goes from being organized, showing up early to workouts, being thorough in your communication processes, following up with people, and being proactive, not waiting and putting stuff off, hard stuff to do, and being reactive and letting problems get bigger. I think that's going to be big. Just set an example, keep it simple, learn from your mistakes, and just know it's a process. And you're going to make mistakes. Don't be too hard on yourself. I think as a young coach too, the last thing I would add is that find somebody that you look up to, that's a leader that you want to emulate, and get them to mentor and bounce stuff off of them as you go. And I think if you do that, a mentor is somebody who's kind of been down the path already and made mistakes, so you can accelerate your learning by just having a great mentor in this profession. And they'll speak wisdom, they'll speak encouragement, they'll give you proper perspective, ask you questions, and give you some ideas and creativity that you don't have the experience there. And so you'll be able to grow faster, be quicker on your feet, and do a great job. So if you'll do those little simple things, you'll have a great time.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think everybody on this call could agree that we've all had some great mentors, and it's definitely led to our success. So thank you for that answer, Donnie. We had another question come in regarding kind of team bonding. And really the question is centered around, how are you getting athletes into like a team competitive setting where there's bonding? And I know Donnie talked a little bit about this and getting his volleyball girls outside and doing some different things. But Arjan, I think you may be able to speak to this one well, if you're doing anything creatively in kind of that team bonding realm.
Yeah, unfortunately, my times to get off campus with the team are limited unless it's for a competition. Echoing similar stuff to Donnie, with men's soccer, getting them out of this environment that we're in all the time, with this windowless room that I'm currently in. So we take them to the beach, we organize different kind of games, put them in teams, and just challenge them, no different to any other school in the country, in just a different environment, force them to work together cooperatively and competitively with some of the teammates that I'm sure they're friends, and maybe some teammates that they haven't known, and doing that as early as we can in that kind of camp preseason process. And I think, the more you can do that, the more time you spend with anyone, really, the better the relationships, the more willing they are to open up and forge those deeper connections. Love is spelled Time, and I think that's very true with our athletes. And when they feel you're invested in them as much as their squat 1 rep max, then I think it helps in that. In the competitive nature, from a bonding, and maybe it's not so much bonding. I mean, I try to make everything we do as competitive as possible, whether it's using our many different sensors and trackers and creating leaderboards, and it's in good spirit, and we push each other because we want to raise our floor up, and it's not personal. It's just we want to win and we want to compete in everything. And I'm sure those are lessons that we want all of our athletes to learn if they don't already embody them, right? Getting the position that they are. So there's my roundabout no answer to the question, Blake.
No, I love it. I love it, man. We do have another one, and we're coming up on time here. So thank you, everybody. If you have any last minute questions that we could do quickly, please throw those in here. This question is, what is one suggestion or learning from the college space that you could bring into the private sector side? I feel like Ryan might have a good answer to this because you do a lot of that private sector training as is. So if there's anything we could take from the college perspective and apply it to the private high performance side, Ryan, what would it be?
I feel like it's been a little while since I've been more on the private side of stuff. But as a coach in general, I think something that can, kind of go on, whether it's private, military, college, whatever, if you're a coach and you're in a leadership position, be yourself. Anyone that you work with is going to want to work with someone that's authentic and genuinely them. Don't, put on a persona that's not you, because if you can be yourself and really build relationships with whoever you're working with, I think that that's going to create a much better environment for everyone else that's involved. So, it doesn't have to be college space. It could be private sector. That's easily transferable. So just be the type of person that you are in and out of the facility, and really kind of just bring that type of energy to all of your sessions. And I think whoever you're working with is going to appreciate it that much more, that you're genuinely bringing who you are.
I have something to add to her. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
I love that. My initial thought was, I don't know if you've all read this book, but this is a required mandatory read, or Audible if you like to listen. But the book is called The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath. And in that book, they talk about the Magic Castle Hotel. It's a very inexpensive hotel in California that you can stay at. It's not luxurious. It doesn't have satin sheets and all the fancy food and all that. What it does, though, is when you go to the swimming pool, there's a red phone out by the swimming pool. And when parents take their kids there, the kids can go up to that red phone at any point, pick up the phone. When they pick up the phone, on the other end is a person saying, "Can I take your order?" And they order whatever popsicle they want. And immediately, here comes a waiter with a silver platter with a little top, and they bring them their popsicle. And this hotel has become notoriously famous. And so they lean into this power of moment. So when you start talking about college in private, when you talk about college in all of our spaces, primarily we create moments in these athletes' lives that they won't ever forget. Moments of challenge, conflict, you speaking into their life, where you saw a weakness in them, or something that maybe a moment where they really shine, right? And you go, man, that's you. And so the more in the private sector you can, instead of it just, I'm going to get you warmed up, I'm going to do core, I'm going to do strength, what can you do creatively to create these powerful moments in their training? Like in the book, they talked about how little kids hate MRI imaging. So this one company took this MRI machine and put all this jungle decoration and monkeys and animals coming into the MRI, so that when they got there, the kids like, wait, I'm not fearful of coming. This is exciting. And so you kind of create this moment in their life. And again, it doesn't have to be expensive, but you can change people's lives by creating these moments that they don't forget, that influences them down the road. So I think that's one way you can bridge college with private.
I love that. Donnie, we're going to have a Donnie Maib book list come out, because you mentioned some just heaters of books. There you go.
That is a must read, 100%.
I love that.
Just got it.
We're seeing a comment, Coach Maib, can you give us some book suggestions? Don't worry, we will get Donnie's book list and we will send that out, because that's awesome. Speaking of Donnie and books, Secret Sauce of Leadership on Amazon. Arjan, last question. This was directed to you, and I want to make sure we get it in. It's coming from my man Brandon Stevens, who also gave Coach Caulfield a shout out. But you're pursuing your doctorate or your PhD. Outside of just time, what are some things someone in a similar position should consider when pursuing a higher level degree?
Well, that was definitely the first thing I was going to mention. So you got to give me a moment.
And Ryan, Metzger, I know you're also in school too. So if you want to chime in after this, I do want to be conscious of time, so we'll keep it concise. Arjan, this one was directed to you.
Yeah, three considerations. I mean, they're all kind of related. So, I mean, one big one is by the time you start your doctorate, before you finish, at least what I'm dealing with right now, a bunch of research gets published and it's coming out at a faster and faster rate. And so the topic that you initially start studying, it might be revealed to maybe not be as cracked up as we once thought it was, or for new evidence to suggest something different. And, you have to keep plugging along, even if your interest has waned personally or on a more broader scale. It's definitely something that you chip away very, very, very slowly. It's been challenging, definitely, to have that balance of knowing when enough is enough for that day, for that week, or you need to, you know, crack that whip on your back metaphorically harder. But you don't get the same kind of reward that you do in other levels of schooling, where it's, you know, it's your semester and you get your assignments, you get your A's, and you finish, and then it's on to the next one. You know, I'm 4 years in and I have 3 years to go by the current estimations. And so it's challenging. You took away time. Other considerations are, you know, why you want to do it. Is it professional? Is it personal? Is it a combination? Because obviously it's a very large undertaking, and it's something you're going to think about every single day. So you want to make sure that you're in it for the right reasons as much as you can. And yeah, I guess another consideration. Yeah, I mean, that'd be the main ones, right? Time, energy, effort. It's going to demand a lot out of you, and just be realistic with your personal situation. I don't know how anyone completes this plus has a family. I have a fiance, but I do not have children yet. So it's something that I would definitely consider prior to that. You know, it's challenging enough with a full-time job. I don't know how you'd be able to raise a kid at the same time, and that's the message from the fiance. One massive life event at a time, but we've got at least 3 more years on the horizon until that question becomes a little more serious.
Blocking out some time for sure. And we'll wrap it up with Ryan, because I know you just started another degree and can speak to this as well. And Arjan, thanks so much for being here with all that you are balancing on your plate. And sorry to your fiance from me personally. We'll get you back to her as soon as this wraps up. But Ryan, we'll end with you. Any considerations?
I think he hits it on the head. Honestly, yeah, I just started my MBA here at Tennessee, and not pursuing a doctorate of 7 years worth of school. Holy cow. But this program is hopefully 2 years, and you know, again, kind of being reflective of why am I doing it? Why am I pursuing it? It kind of gives it more purpose. But I would say the biggest thing to consider is time. And for me, because I balance a full-time coaching position, training, school, it gives me a lot of structure. And so I actually really thrive on that. So I really like it. And it just becomes schoolwork every day is just part of my day now. So just making sure that you can find a spot for it within your schedule so that you can actually be successful instead of just saying that you did it.
I love it. Perfect. Well, guys, it's time. We did it. Thank you so much for being here. I know some of you are on spring break, and it's like your only chance to catch your breath before we get back into it. So again, from Lumin, we want to thank our guests. We want to thank everybody who hopped on. This will be recorded, and you can see it and watch it at a later time. Also expect a follow-up email from us. In that email, we are offering everybody who attended this webinar a 1-month free trial of Lumin. So make sure to check that out. Follow these coaches on social media where you can ask them more questions. Again, thank you from Lumin Sports. I'm Blake. Have a great night or day wherever you are.
Thanks very much, Blake. Appreciate it, guys.
Strong work, folks.